Hello, welcome to another IELTS essay writing video. Today we are looking at how to respond to a Task 2 question that asks for personal examples. The question that we are looking at today was given to me by a number of students who took the exam in San Francisco, California. This is a question that was on the general exam, and all students took the exam in early September 2011. Now let's read through the question together. People who marry late have greater opportunity for professional success than those who marry early. Is there any truth in this statement? Use personal examples to illustrate your position. I will give you a few seconds to read the question again by yourself. So basically, the question is very straightforward. It states a position, and then it states a question, and then it states some instruction words. So the position is basically people who marry late have a greater opportunity for professional success than people who marry early. The question that we're given, is there any truth in this statement, is simply asking us if we believe this statement is true, or if we believe this statement is false, or if we believe this statement is somewhat true. So we know from the question that to respond to this task effectively, we're going to have to write an argument essay. We are being asked to choose a position, and to do that effectively, we need to use an argument essay style. Now the final part of the task description is use personal examples to illustrate your position. In this case, we're going to have to think about some experiences that we've had that or perhaps that another person that we know has had that support our position when writing this essay. So now what I thought we could do together first is to brainstorm some ideas that support and refute this essay question, and following this we could choose which side of the argument we want to write our essay on. So the essay question is asking us if marrying early is better for career-oriented people. And if we were to think about things that, or maybe points that would support this, I'm sure one of the first things that would come to our mind is the fact that married people are perhaps less free in some ways to just pick up and travel to another part of the world for career purposes, and they would most likely have to coordinate any career changes they made with each other. So, so perhaps an idea that that we could put in our supporting column would be something like married people are less free to travel as they need to coordinate their careers. something like that. And now if we think about another reason that would support this side of the argument, perhaps, well, married people are usually more likely to have children before unmarried people. And I suppose if someone marries earlier, there's probably a good chance that they would have children earlier. And children require a lot of supervision, and they perhaps take up a lot of a person's extra time. So perhaps we could say something like married people may choose to have children. Excuse me, I forgot to put my dash. May choose to have children which restricts time. Okay, so a couple of points that support this argument. Now I should point out that, of course, when we're in the exam, this would be going on inside of our head. We're not actually writing this down, this supporting and refuting column, but we're just going through the thought process here. So now if we think about things, points that would refute the idea that unmarried people tend to achieve success or more success than married people, maybe we can think of something like family responsibilities could possibly be carried out by others. So the idea that a married person would have less time to commit to their career is not accurate, because they could simply perhaps hire people to take care of some of their duties as a married person. So maybe we could say something like many family responsibilities, such as taking care of children or whatever responsibilities, it could be carried out by paid help. So we're kind of debunking the idea in our supporting column that married people have less free time for their career. Now, another idea could be perhaps that married people tend to be more settled than single people, and maybe that this is a healthy thing for their career. So maybe something like married people may have more stable lives, we'll say. Stable, oops, let me scroll down here. May have more stable lives. Maybe something like which could be good for their corporate image. Something like that. Personally, I find it a little bit difficult to find points to support the refute column. I mean, I don't think our points here are really all that strong, to be honest. But anyways, so when we're in the exam, we're doing this kind of thinking in our heads. We're thinking quickly, what are some points that would support this idea? What are some points that would refute this idea? And then all we need to do is just choose which side is easier to write. And when we're in the exam, our goal is to perform as effectively as we can. So sometimes it's better to write the easiest essay that is possible for the sake of our mark. So I'm sure that maybe some people are watching this and thinking, well, personally, I believe I would refute this, but I mean, if we're writing the essay, it might just be a little bit easier for us to support it because the points are a little bit clearer. So let's assume that we're going to support this idea, so that it's easier for unmarried people to achieve success in their careers than it is for their married counterparts. So the 2 points that we've decided on are: married people are less free to travel as they need to coordinate their careers, and married people may choose to have children earlier, which would restrict their free time and would restrict the time that they can commit to their career. So now that we have the 2 points, we've been asked to include experiences in our own lives to support these points. So we might have to think of an experience that we had that would support both the first point here and a second experience we had that would support the second point. So now for myself personally, I would probably share an experience related to my career, in that I was able to, as a single person in Canada, very easily get up and move to Dubai, and move to other countries as well. And maybe I would use this as my example for the first point, and just compare that to perhaps a few of my friends that were married in Canada earlier on, and didn't have that sort of flexibility. Now, for the second point, married people may choose to have children, which restricts time. We might think of an example. So, for myself, maybe some friends that had children, and then found that they had to settle down somewhere. Maybe that they had to create kind of some sort of stable living arrangement for the sake of their children. So these would be the kinds of examples that we would need to include to support these points. Now, let's get started on our essay. So let me just start a nice fresh page here. Okay, so now that first little brainstorming session, let's say that whole thing might take about 1 minute on the exam, maybe a little bit longer. And now we are ready to start our writing. So now we would need some kind of opening sentence that gives us a bit of general background on the topic. So the topic is career development and its relationship to marriage, and the idea of marrying early versus marrying late. So perhaps we could say something like this, maybe marriage patterns. We're talking about global patterns around the world. Let's say marriage patterns vary around the world. Very simple. Marriage patterns vary around the world. Now, we want to start to kind of become a little bit more narrow in our wording. So the first sentence is quite broad, and in this next sentence we're going to start to narrow in on what our thesis is. So perhaps we can make a comment about trends in the world tend to be favoring the idea of marrying at a later point in life versus an earlier point. That's very true where I am here in China. In Dubai, I think that's also becoming more and more true. And in the Western world, it's quite true now that people are marrying later and later in life, usually starting their careers and getting a solid footing in that area first. So let's make a comment about this trend that seems to be in practice around the world. So we'll start with however. So marriage patterns vary around the world. However, a trend that appears to be common among most countries. is the decision couples are making to wed at progressively later points in their lives. Okay, so marriage patterns vary around the world. Very broad sentence in the beginning. However, a trend that appears to be common among most countries is the decision couples are making to wed at progressively later points in their lives. So now we've started to bring in the topic of marrying early versus marrying late. So we can see that this is starting to become more narrow. Now that we get to our thesis, we're going to answer the question directly. And as the question said, it was basically a do you agree or disagree that that marrying later is beneficial to a person's career and professional life. So let's see here. We might start with something like it is believed that marrying later provides greater opportunities for professional success. Okay, very simple, very straightforward, and it answers our essay question precisely. So when our examiner reads this essay, they're not, when the examiner reads this introduction, they're not confused at all regarding what our position is. We've stated it very clearly. So now what they're expecting is that the rest of this essay is going to support this thesis. So now we have a background sentence, we have our detailed background sentence, we've just written our thesis. Now we need to include a sentence that delivers the 2 points that we decided on before, and we need to state these just sort of briefly. We're going to talk about them in detail in our supporting paragraphs, but here we're just stating them briefly. So let's see, we could start with something like this will be proven. Now I'll just point out, whoops, for 1 second, that the word this, what does this refer to? It refers to this thesis, this idea. So we're saying this will be proven by analyzing the ease with which single people. Now our first point was regarding coordinating a job in the world and moving to another location. It's much easier to do if you're only one person versus 2 people who have to coordinate 2 separate careers. So the ease with which single people coordinate career changes, and our second point was regarding children and having people dependent on you. So perhaps we would say something like, and the freedom they have from dependent from perhaps we'll say family responsibilities. That's a better way to say it. Responsibilities. Okay, just let me reread this sentence. This will be proven by analyzing the ease with which single people coordinate career changes and the freedom they have from family responsibilities. So now all we've done is we've outlined the 2 points that we're going to use to support our thesis. And now when our reader finishes this introduction sentence, they feel they know exactly what we're going to do in the rest of the essay. It's very clear. So the introduction is like a roadmap. It just shows us exactly what we're going to talk about in the next couple of paragraphs. Okay, let's start our first supporting paragraph. Now we're talking about how it's easier for single people to coordinate their career changes, how it's easier for them to do it than for married people. So we can start with a sentence such as, maybe in most cases, of course this is not true for everybody, but in most cases, individuals who are not married let's say that they enjoy much more flexibility. Maybe much more flexible lives than their married counterparts, we'll say, than their married counterparts. Okay, in most cases, individuals who are not married enjoy much more flexible lives than their married counterparts. I'll just put a space in here to make it a little bit clearer. This is a new paragraph. Okay. So, now I'm going to share a personal example. So, for example, so perhaps I might say, as a young, unmarried professional, in Canada, I was free. I was free to travel to any country for the purpose of furthering my career, maybe for the purpose of furthering my career. Okay, I was free to travel. Okay. For the purpose of furthering my career. Okay, now let's compare this to my married friends. So, for my married friends, this lifestyle was we'll say difficult for them to follow. And we'll say it involves coordinating career changes, as it involved coordinating career changes between, what am I doing here? Coordinating between spouses. Sorry, maybe I'll just change this to coordinate career changes with their spouses. Their spouses. Okay. Okay, so now I just need to link this back to my thesis. So what I've done is I've given an example. I've shown how it was easier for me to, as a single person, to kind of pick up and pursue my career in another country than it was for my married friends. And so now I'm going to just link this back to my thesis and show how this entire paragraph supports the main idea of the essay. So as my experience shows, marrying late provides more room for career development, we'll say. Okay, so can you see how this last sentence links us back to the thesis? I've linked my example here and the discussion we've made on this example back to the overall idea of the essay. Let's read the paragraph together from the top. In most cases, individuals who are not married enjoy much more flexible lives than their married counterparts. Now, I just want to point out this first sentence. There, as you can see, there is no mention of myself or my example. This is just a general point. And sometimes my online students, they will submit essays to me, and they'll share their personal example in the first sentence. And I feel this kind of weakens your position a little bit, because you're trying to prove a point that has sort of been generalized for everybody. It's not just regarding you, but you're trying to prove this point while giving examples for your from your own experience. So I think that if you start introducing your example in the beginning of the paragraph, it's not quite as clear what your point is as if you just state the point first and then include the example. So following this, we go to the example. For example, as a young unmarried professional in Canada, I was free to travel to any country for the purpose of furthering my career. And I don't know if this might be new, but you can use further as a verb, as I have here. For my married friends, this lifestyle was difficult for them to follow, as it involved coordinating career changes with their spouses. Okay, so I've given my example as a single guy, and I've compared it to the examples that my friends experienced, the experiences my friends had. And now I'm going to just do a little discussion at the end. As my experience shows, marrying late provides more room for career development. So let's move on to our next supporting paragraph. And as we said before, this supporting paragraph is about family and how perhaps people who marry early tend to start a family early, or at least earlier than a single person, in most cases, not all cases. So, linking phrase, in addition to this, okay, in addition to this, those who marry early also tend to start families early. And these responsibilities, we'll say that are usually quite time-consuming. We'll say are usually, let's say, extremely time-consuming. Extremely time-consuming. In addition to this, those who marry early also tend to start families early, and these responsibilities are usually extremely time-consuming. For instance, married colleagues let's say married colleagues of mine in Dubai decided to have their first baby just thinking here, they're in their mid-20s, so maybe I could say when they were in their mid-20s. In their mid-20s. Now, mid-20s, by maybe in the West, that would probably be a little bit on the early side, but you know, everybody's different. So now let's talk about this a bit. Although, I mean, of course, although they were very happy with we'll say with their new family, although very happy with their new family, what they did not realize was that they could no longer we'll say they could no longer commit the extra working hours needed to advance their professions, we'll say. So, although very happy with their new family, what they did not realize was that they could no longer commit the extra working hours needed to advance their professions. Okay, needed to advance their professions. Now, let's link this back to our thesis. Now, in our last paragraph, we used as this shows, so let's say something like this example. Maybe we can say this example makes it clear. This example makes it clear. Marrying later typically provides people with the time they need to grow professionally. Okay, so what we've done is we've linked the idea of marrying early with the idea of having children early, and then we, at the end in this sentence here, we've just shown that okay, so obviously that if you marry later, that provides you with more time because you will maybe tend to start your family later. So this example makes it clear marrying later typically provides people the time they need to grow professionally. So let's go back to the beginning of this paragraph. In addition to this, those who marry early also tend to start families early, and these responsibilities are usually extremely time-consuming. For instance, married colleagues of mine in Dubai decided to have their first baby when they were in their mid-20s. Although very happy with their new family, what they did not realize was that they could no longer commit the extra working hours needed to advance their professions. This example makes it clear marrying later typically provides people with the time they need to grow professionally. Okay, so let's get started here. Now we're going to first make a little reference to these 2 points and perhaps summarize the essay as a whole. Following this, we're going to restate our position, and so basically just restate the thesis. And then we're going to make a small comment at the end of the essay, which can be a recommendation or a prediction. And this is how we will close the essay. So in summary, we might say something like the above points make it clear that there is a definite relationship between career growth and career growth and, we'll say, family commitments. Okay. So the above points make it clear that there is a definite relationship between career growth and, actually I better make this a little bit more specific because family commitments does not quite link to the thesis, so let's just say and marriage. Okay, now to conclude, let's maybe we can just make a comment that you know, having a family is of course a very positive thing and can be considered a blessing. But you know, according to our essay, professional growth, maybe people that are seriously thinking about professional growth needs to also plan to perhaps enter into the commitment of marriage and having a family at a later point. This is just, you know, in accordance with our essay, what we've been arguing so far. So maybe we conclude something like this: although marriage and marriage and children are a blessing, family planning is a necessary step. Serious professionals need to consider. Okay. The above points make it clear that there is a definite relationship between career growth and marriage. Thus, although marriage and children are a blessing, family planning is a necessary step serious professionals need to consider. So let's try reading the essay from the beginning. So, from the top, marriage patterns vary around the world. However, a trend that appears to be common among most countries is the decision couples are making to wed at progressively later points in their lives. It is believed that marrying later provides greater opportunities for professional success. This will be proven by analyzing the ease with which single people coordinate career changes and the freedom they have from family responsibilities. In most cases, individuals who are not married enjoy much more flexible lives than their married counterparts. For example, as a young unmarried professional in Canada, I was free to travel to any country for the purpose of furthering my career. For my married friends, this lifestyle was difficult for them to follow, as it involved coordinating career changes with their spouses. As my experience shows, marrying late provides more room for career development. In addition to this, those who marry early also tend to start families early, and these responsibilities are usually extremely time-consuming. For instance, married colleagues of mine in Dubai decided to have their first baby when they were in their mid-20s. Although very happy with their new family, what they did not realize was that they could no longer commit the extra working hours needed to advance their professions. Maybe I'll just add advance their professions rapidly, I'll say. Not that their professions, didn't continue to advance. Advance their professions rapidly. This example makes it clear marrying later typically provides people with the time they need to grow professionally. The above points make it clear that there is a definite relationship between career growth and marriage. Okay, let me just change this because we used make it clear twice very closely together. The above points clarify that there is a definite relationship between career growth and marriage. Thus, although marriage and children are a blessing, family planning is a necessary step serious professionals need to consider. Okay, and that concludes the lesson for today. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you for listening.